So hello everyone, it is finally time. Halloween Horror Nights has finally done a full reveal for Halloween Horror Nights 31 and we have a lot to talk about today. First, let me introduce myself. Hi, I am Liz. I am a huge Halloween Horror Nights fan. I obviously run this YouTube channel, but I also run HHN Rumors on Twitter. If you aren't following there, make sure to follow that account. We are very close to Halloween, which means this channel is about to turn into full haunt season mode. So that includes Halloween Horror Nights Orlando, Hallowscream Tampa, Hallowscream Orlando, Sir Henry's, and maybe some other local haunts as well. So if you love Halloween, if you love haunt content, make sure to subscribe. So I know it felt like it took forever, but we finally have our full event release. We have all 10 houses. We have 5, possibly 6 scare zones. We have 2 shows. There's a lot to discuss. Let's not waste any time. Let's get straight into it. Let's go through the house list first. I'm gonna be pulling my information from the Horror Nights press release that gives full descriptions of the houses, as a little more information than what they posted on the website, which has a lot of Scream Squad moments. And if you follow me on Twitter, you already saw my reaction to seeing Scream Squad 20 times today. That is my villain origin story, but thankfully the press release does not have Scream Squad listed and it just has the descriptions of the houses. We already know The Weekend, Halloween, Legends Collide, The Horrors of Blumhouse. Those have already been announced. I already have videos about those, so if you missed those, check those out. So we're gonna skip over those and move to today's announcements, which include Spirits of the Coven. Guests will be invited to a lively 1920s speakeasy, but something sinister is brewing beneath in Spirits of the Coven. A coven of seemingly beautiful flapper witches will lure those who enter into a hidden brewing area. Once they've ensnared their victims, they'll reveal their haggish true form and turn guests into a witch's brew. They'll be cackling. Everyone else will be screaming. I love it. I cannot wait for this house. This is definitely high up on my list. I'm so glad that the speakeasy rumor turned out to be true. I think this is going to be a great original take on a witch's house. I can't wait to see the flapper witches and then the hag witches later on. I think this is a fantastic concept for an original and I'm very excited for it. This one's also going to be in a soundstage, so I expect some fantastic sets. Next up, we have Brittany's least anticipated house. It is Bugs Eaten Alive. While touring a 1950s home of the future, guests will be swarmed by hordes of revolting insects after pest control system failure unleashes them. Many-legged horrors, growing, mutating, and laying eggs in human hosts will worm their way into your deepest of fears. Those who dare to enter will be dropping like flies in Bugs Eaten Alive. Oh man. 1, the 1950s rumor turned out to be true. 2, I love that it's set in a 1950s home of the future. You guys know I love the 50s, 60s era, so I think this is going to be a fantastic setting for a house. However, this one does not sound like it's a comedy house. It sounds like it's going to be terrifying. I have more to discuss about Bugs Eaten Alive later because we have a little more information about that house from a podcast. I'm hearing it's going to be terrifying. So if you hate bugs, prepare yourself. That house is going to be in one of the 10 houses, but still I think it's going to be a really great house. Next up, we have Fiesta de Chupacabras. The mountains of Latin America are filled with many wonderful traditions. In one tiny village, they pay tribute to the legendary creature Chupacabras with an annual fiesta. In Fiesta de Chupacabras, there's more to the legend than meets the eye. And in this colorful village, the streets are lined with crimson blood of visitors. Uh-oh. My sentiments are still the same as my last video. I do hope it's more of a terrifying creature and not a dog on a stick situation. This sounds like it's going to be very scenic. It's another soundstage house, but it sounds like we're going to be going through the mountains of a tiny Latin village. I think the settings of this could be amazing. Moving on to our most secretive original, which is our replacement original, that is Hellblock Horror. So this is the one we were saying was a prison house. We were on the right track, but it's not Hellgate. Hellblock Horror. They too do time for their crimes. In Hellblock Horror, guests will have to survive visiting hours in a secret penitentiary that houses treacherous monsters and fiends of all kinds that are hell-bent on taking over and destroying the world. The interdimensional power core containing the inmates has failed, and the monsters are breaking out of their cells, allowing them easy access to guests. and the exit. I think this is such a better concept than what I was imagining. I was imagining your standard prison house, human inmates. I think this is going to be much better. If you attended the event in 2013, we had Cabin in the Woods. Seeing monsters in that kind of cell block was terrifying. So I could absolutely see an entire house with that kind of space jail feel where it's not, you know, your normal cells. Sounds like we might see some familiar monsters, hopefully some Horror Nights monsters. Would love to see some nightingales back in there. We'll see. That is also a soundstage house. However, this is the replacement house, so I don't know quite how scenic it's going to be because they did have to kind of rush to build this one, but I think the costumes are going to be where it's at. Next up, Dead Man's Pier, Winter's Wake. Still don't know why they couldn't call it Dead Man's Wharf and why they switched to Dead Man's Pier, but here we are. There's nothing charming about this ghostly New England fishing village. A phantom sea captain is summoning undead fishermen from their watery grave, a grisly crew with rotting barnacle-encrusted bodies. Guests may have escaped their hooks in the Dead Man's Wharf Scarezone in 2016. Now they'd better batten down the hatches before they're reeled in and drug under in Dead Man's Pier, Winter's Wake. Soundstage house, it's exactly what we were expecting. It's Dead Man's Wharf, but it's set in winter. So they don't really talk about it in the press release, but the name is Winter's Wake. It's gonna be frozen, it's going to be cold. We're gonna see those iconic fisherman costumes from Dead Man's Pier, Dead Man's Wharf return, and this one is probably my most anticipated original. And our last house is Descendents of Destruction. Deep in the subway tunnels below an abandoned toxic city, mutated humans fight for survival in Descendants of Destruction. The deeper one goes, the darker their fate. In the fading light of the poisoned depths, hideous creatures who have long ago left their humanity behind prey on all who try to make their way through the darkness. Again, we were right on the money. I do believe that this was where people got the Last of Us idea. I don't know if this was a Last of Us house that turned into Descendants of Destruction, or if it was always Descendants of Destruction and rumors started thinking it was Last of Us because it was a subway and kind of zombie creatures. I don't know if it's the chicken or the egg here. It does not sound like it's Seeds of Extinction related to me. I don't know where that rumor came from. We do have a subway and not quite zombies, but mutants. So Descendants is our other tent house in the back over by Men in Black area. I'm very curious to see how this house turns out. So that is our 10th house. Let's move on to the scare zones. So yet again, right on the money with the scare zones, but let's get into the official descriptions of these 5 areas. So right when you walk in the park, the first zone that you will see is Horrors of Halloween. The Pumpkin Lord, the spirit of Halloween, has returned to take over this year's event, summoning hordes of fiendish creatures, including demons, ghosts, and witches. Terror has taken root. I knew this was going to be a traditional zone. I suspected that we would see Pumpkin Lord and Lil Boo. I mentioned that in my last video. I did not know the Pumpkin Lord was going to actually be the zone. We've seen today in construction, Lil Boo is up there. They have scaffolding up with pumpkins all over it, and today Lil Boo was installed, so he is there. It looks like he is way up in the tippy top, so you're not getting a selfie with him this year, but he is up there, and it sounds like Pumpkin Lord will be there in all his glory as well, welcoming you to this Halloween themed event. I already know the debates are gonna start whether or not Pumpkin Lord is an icon. Personally, I think it's debatable because he doesn't have a backstory, but if it's a contest between who is an icon between Pumpkin Lord or Bones, I will give it to Pumpkin Lord over Bones. I said what I said. Moving on through the park, in New York, we have Sweet Revenge. The sweets from Major Sweets Candy Company have turned these 1950s kids into crazed killers. With pint-sized costumed maniacs roaming the streets, Halloween will be a night of trick-or-treat mayhem. The tribute store didn't lie, and sure enough, it's the 1950s, just like the tribute store hinted. We've got a candy company that's poisoning children, turning them into crazed killers. They're gonna be on the loose. It's a very heavily traditional Halloween zone full of candy. We've seen props in the street that allude to a Halloween parade. We've got the Major Sweets logo with Lil Boo on his hat, and the tribute store is transitioning to be the theater from the 1950s. Moving through the park to San Francisco, you have Conjure the Dark. An evil sorceress has entered twisted stone ruins and called forth monstrosities from dark dimensions. This Halloween, blood will feed her army of the night. Traditional witches, not quite a coven, but it is still traditional witches pulling monsters from other dimensions. Very Halloween. We've seen the props in the zone with the cauldron. It looks like there's fire attached to that cauldron. I think this is going to give all of the Halloween vibes. Now, if you're going around the park, you're gonna have a little bit of a dead area. Rumor has it that there might be chainsaws returning to Simpsons. I don't know for sure. I have no idea what theme they would be if they are there, but I've heard whispers that there is a 6th group cast. That would lead me to believe that we're gonna have some roaming hordes over in Simpsons. I hope that's true because I missed my chainsaws last year, and I hope they'll be back bringing all the screams while I enjoy a beverage or a snack, sitting on those benches and just enjoying every second of it. In Central Park, we have Scarecrow, Cursed Soil. At an abandoned farm, Scarecrow sentinels have risen from the crust of the earth to hunt souls and seek revenge. They'll harvest the screams of those who dare to enter this dilapidated barn. So we had suspicions that that big structure they were building in Central Park was going to be a barn, and sure enough, that one section of Central Park is going to be a barn structure, and then you're gonna have scarecrows all through there. It's going to be fantastic. They've put lanterns in the trees. I love scarecrows at Horror Nights. You guys know I had my Scarecrow friends there for a couple years in 2014 and 2015. I'm excited to make some new Scarecrow friends this year, and I think this zone is going to be a favorite. Sadly, it's one of the busiest areas of the park, so it's one of the hardest zones to watch, but I cannot wait to see what they do with music, lighting, everything. Then last but not least, in Hollywood, we have Graveyard Deadly Unrest. On All Hallows Eve, a dark storm descends upon a cemetery and awakes long dead spirits. These specters rise from their graves to capture souls for all eternity. No one living can escape them. If you didn't read "for all eternity" in the Mummy voice, are you really even a Universal fan? I don't know. So that's our Scare Zone list. Personally, I think that's one of the best Scare Zone lists we've had in years, possibly for me since 2015. I just think that they are all solid. I know it's classic Halloween, which is right up my alley, but I just love that it's a cohesive theme like that. I know not every year is conducive for that, but for this 31st year, I love that we're gonna have so much traditional Halloween around. So we also received our official word on the 2 shows for Halloween Horror Nights. We have Halloween Nightmare Fuel Wildfire and Ghoulish, a Halloween Tale. For Nightmare Fuel Wildfire, the show that sparked a firestorm last year is ablaze with a new nightmare. Guests can get fired up to the beat of metal, rock, and electronica as pyro and aerial performers return to reignite fears. There's a lot of fire words in that. They are definitely doubling down on the fire. More fire at Nightmare Fuel. Then we have Ghoulish, a Halloween Tale, which is replacing Marathon of Mayhem. As darkness falls, a ghost story becomes reality as guests go beyond the grave in a spectacularly spooky show on Universal Studios Lagoon featuring huge water screens and sinister music. I will definitely be into seeing that one. I do love the Lagoon shows. I think they're very well done. I love the way that they add in the music, the water, the projections. I think it's very well done, so make sure to check out that show if you have time. I don't know if I'll ever see Nightmare Fuel. That might be one that I just watch on YouTube from other people, but the Lagoon show is definitely something that I will make time for. So that is our official full list from Halloween Horror Nights, but before I go, I do want to share a few little tidbits that came from the Discover Universal podcast. I will put a link to the podcast down below so you can hear the whole thing. A few things that I gathered from the podcast. 1, the Bugs house. It's going to be very, very scary. It sounds like we're going to have flies, wasps, spiders, larvae, maggots, gross, disgusting goo. There's going to be stuff in face, so I'm expecting spider webs. They mentioned a giant spider. This one is going to get under your skin, and I hope not literally under your skin because it is bugs we're talking about here. Originally, when I heard 1950s bugs, I was thinking comedy, and they do mention in the podcast it has dark humor. I don't think it's gonna be funny to most people. I think this is going to be terrifying. So if you hate bugs, this might be the scariest house you've ever been through. For Dead Man's Pier, they do specifically mention the frost and the snow and that you're being beaten down by a storm, so it sounds like we might be going through a blizzard. I cannot wait to see. I love when they do snowy houses like Winter's Night or Yeti. I love walking into a snowy house, so I'm very curious to see how they combine a nautical seafaring theme with snow. The Chupacabra house. In theory, it sounds like the Chupacabras are what we're avoiding, but in reality, it sounds like this tiny town in the mountains. They're having a festival. We as tourists see the festival, want to join in, but little do we know they're actually luring us in to sacrifice us to the Chupacabras to save the town. So we're not only fighting Chupacabras and trying to escape from them, but we're also escaping the people who live in the village who are trying to murder us to feed us to the Chupacabras. So I am very excited for that concept. Hellblock Horror, they specifically mention aliens, zombies, vampires, and some familiar faces. So I do think we're going through the vaults of Halloween Horror Nights costumes. I got my aliens last year, I want my nightingales back this year. So those were my favorite tidbits that I pulled from that interview. However, there are more hints scattered throughout, so give it a listen if you want to know the rest. Well guys, it's done. We finally have our event for Halloween Horror Nights 31. What do you think? Leave me comments down below. Let me know what you're thinking about these final 6 original houses, these 5 original scare zones. I personally think it's a great lineup. I am really excited to see these originals. I am stoked for the scare zones. I am definitely more excited for this year, maybe than I even was for last year. I'm ready to be in the fog, getting to see all of these for the first time in person. So speculation and announcement season is now officially over. That doesn't mean that my channel is going silent until opening weekend. I have more videos planned for you in the next couple weeks before opening weekend, and opening weekend is right around the corner. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe, and I'll be back very soon with more Halloween Horror Nights content. Until then, stay safe and stay spooky. Bye.